and all my family loved him. He was incredibly patient and kept me motivated not only at the gym but in school as well. He had to work late on his birthday 9 p.m. So I took him out to Buffalo Wild Wings for his birthday and we had a great time. I had also set up a surprise birthday party for him the next day, his actual birthday. Nothing extravagant, but his two roommates, the lady I thought he was dating and another coworker of theirs, were immediately on board and had told him they were going on a couple's trip for the weekend. My family wanted to come to be there for the surprise and cake before heading home, and a handful of other friends. Everything was in place and the plan was that I would hide behind the door and jump on his back and cover his eyes, then the lights would come on and everyone would yell. Looking back, that was such a dumb idea, but it sounded funny at the time. I heard his truck pull into the drive and everyone hid. It was almost pitch black in the house. He opens the door and shuts it and takes a few steps and I jump on his back. Everything happened so fast. I was immediately flipped over and slammed into the ground as the lights came on. I felt a sharp, intense pain in my shoulder and my ears were ringing. He was horrified at what happened and my brother and dad started yelling at him. He was trying to help and my mother and his roommates had to get between him and my father and brother. He just kept apologizing to me. So we spent his birthday in the ER. I had a separated shoulder and broken collarbone. I was initially furious at him for doing that and didn't want him around me. So he sat in the waiting room. By then my brother and father had calmed down and realized it for what it was. What was he supposed to think walking into his house believing it to be empty and get jumped on from behind? Eventually I agreed to let him come back and he immediately started to cry and telling me how sorry he was and that he would never ever do that to me again. I want to make this clear to everyone reading this. This was in no way his fault. It was a natural reaction and I wish I had never jumped on his back. He struggled more than I did to put this behind us, but I kept up with my schoolwork and we continued to grow close over the next year. I would listen to him vent about work and he would do the same for me and my schoolwork. We went on weekend trips, sometimes just us and sometimes with friends. Sorry I am trying to keep this short, but I have so many happy memories that I want to share, but I'll get to the reason why I'm posting this. Eventually he asked me to marry him and it was a no-brainer. He was and still is the love of my life and the only man for me. We got married in a small ceremony with family and a few friends. When his second enlistment ended, we decided that the opportunity for him as a civilian air traffic controller was too good to pass up. It was hard for him to say goodbye to the Air Force, but he wanted us to finally settle down. We had a move between our wedding and when he finally left the service. By then I was working and we had a very large amount saved up. As he waited to find out where the FAA wanted him to go, we stayed with my brother and his wife back in my hometown. Eventually he got the email and to our surprise he would be working fairly close to where we already were. He knew how much I had missed my hometown, so we decided to buy a house and he would commute almost an hour and a half each way. It is a huge sacrifice on his part. 2020 happened and I lost my job, but my husband made more than enough to cover my lost wages. We weren't getting any younger and decided to start a family. It took a bit, but eventually I got pregnant and we have a wonderful 2-year-old son. First year was a struggle for us both as we tried to adapt to parenthood. My husband struggled more than I did, but I helped him. If you have kept up with the news, the FAA is short-staffed with not enough controllers, so my husband works mandatory overtime and usually most shifts are 10 hours, legally the max, and each Wednesday he gets off work at 11 p.m. and has to be back at work by 8 a.m. That's a very short turnaround that would leave him with at the most 5 hours of sleep if he drove home. So on those nights he sleeps at a coworker's house. He has offered to make the drive, but I don't want him driving tired or working tired either. Honestly, it did suck on those nights when he wasn't home and our son just wouldn't sleep. He encouraged me to reconnect with old friends and I have, which leaves us with the reason for this post. 2 weeks ago I met up with some old girlfriends for a play date to watch our kids crawl around. Most of them were complaining about their husbands, fiancés or boyfriends not helping around the house. I do most of the housework, but my husband has always helped me when he is home. I changed the subject and asked one of my friends, I'll call Lana, how often does her daughter wake up in the middle of the night? This eventually led to me telling them that my husband stays near his work on Wednesdays and some of those nights were rough on me, especially early on. That got me a lot of sympathy and I don't know why it felt good to hear someone that wasn't family say those things. I kept my mouth shut when they said my husband should just suck it up and take care of his kid and that their husbands commute 2 hours to work each way. I wanted to say, well, your husbands have the same hours every day and aren't responsible for others' lives. Instead, I just nodded in agreement. It makes me sick that I did that. My husband woke up just as much as I did and still does when our son needs him. Last week my husband had a very rare Saturday and Sunday off. My parents offered us a child-free weekend to include Thursday and Friday and we took it. My husband was working and I met my sister-in-law that Thursday for lunch to invite them over for dinner on Friday. I tripped on the curb and had to twist to make sure my son didn't hit the cement. I banged my right knee pretty good. It's still purple but not hurting as much. We wanted to have some people over for dinner and invited my older brother/sister-in-law as well as two of my friends from the previous week and their husbands. Going back to getting slammed by my husband, he mentioned that he hates that story. That even if it wasn't intentional, he seriously injured me. So I stopped telling that story out of respect for him. Friday rolls around and my husband picks up everything we need to make a large pot of spaghetti and a few bottles of wine. We had been discussing trying to have another child, so I was planning on getting a bit tipsy and jumping my husband's bones after our guests left. I wore a white halter top dress that he loves. Risky to wear when eating pasta and drinking red wine, but I felt good. Our guests arrive and we all ourselves a glass of wine and making small talk. I noticed Lana whispering something to her husband but ignore it, figuring maybe she liked something and was asking her husband if they could get something similar. The dinner starts and everything is going well. My husband isn't a big drinker but had went to get himself a second glass and tongs to make getting seconds easier. I was almost done with my fourth, as was my sister-in-law and Lana. My other friend, Sarah fake name, was sipping her first and their husbands were taking it slow. My brother got a call from work and stepped into a guest room to take the call. That's when my sister-in-law